Hi guys, let's create a API using FastAPI library in Python. So first of all, we need to create a folder for our project. So let's create a folder. Now open that folder in VS Code. First thing we need to create a virtual environment in Python. So let's open up a terminal and type command py-3 the name venv. Now you have to give a name for your virtual environment. I will give it a name of venv. After this virtual environment has been created, we have to tell our compile interpreter, Python interpreter to select this environment. So we'll go as Python interpreter and then we'll select this virtual venv colon venv. Let's create a folder as app. Our whole code will reside in this app folder. Let's create a file name as main.py. As you can see here that our virtual environment has been selected as a default interpreter. Okay, so let's install FastAPI. FastAPI is a library which is used to create an API very easily in Python. So we can install it by typing pip install FastAPI all. All will install all the other dependence library which we require to use FastAPI. After installing FastAPI, let's start the server. So from FastAPI, import FastAPI. Then we need to create an instance for this fast API. So we'll store it in an app variable. Now let's create a root route. We'll type in iterate the name of the variable app dot get and we'll give a route. But we will hit this endpoint. This function will be called. So let's create a function for that. So define. I'll give it a name as root and I'll simply return a message which will say welcome to fast API. Okay, let's save the file and start the server. To start server, you have to type uvcon, the name of the folder, which in this case app, dot the name of the file, which is main, and colon the name of the variable where the instance of FastAPI has been stored. So that's also an app. And we'll put a reload flag so that whenever we change any code, the server will restart. Okay, so the server has been started at this URL. As you can see that there is a message of welcome to Fast API. So we have successfully started our server. To test the API, we need to install an extension in VS Code. So to install an extension, go to here, extension, and type Thunder client. So this is the extension we need to install. I've already installed, so it's looking like this. If you haven't installed it, it will give an option to install. When you have successfully installed the Thunder client, here you can see it's here in the sidebar menu. Click here. We can click on new request and here we can type our endpoint which is HTTPS, not user. This is our root endpoint. When you will hit, we will get a message of welcome to Fast API. Now we will create one endpoint which is user. We will create a folder inside app where we will store all our routes. So let's create a folder name as routes. The first route will be users. So let's create a file called users.py. Here we will import router API routers from Fast API. So from Fast API router. Then we will create an instance of route API router and we'll give a prefix for this. And for our users route, we will give prefix as users. Now, We'll first create a get route for this user. So enter it. So on this path, on users slash path, this function will be called. Whenever you will visit users slash path, this function will be called. Whenever this path will called, we will return all the users which you have stored. So first of all, let's create a global variable of users equals to an empty array. Now give it a name of the function and we will return a total key which will be the length of our users and a data key which will store all our users. To test this API, let's go to Thunder client, create a new request, type the URL. This time we will go to users route slash which we have created now. So in this route it's not found because we have just created our route. We have to include this route in this main file. So to include it, we will write app dot include sorry app dot include routers, the name of our user route. So we will import dot from dot routes import users and we will put users dot router. Okay. So let's test again. As you can see that we are getting the required response. Now let's create a post route. In post route, we will get the request data from the user and we will store it in our users array variable. To do so, let's create a post route by using router dot post and endpoint for this route will be just slash, which means users slash. In this route, we can post. We'll create a function called as create user. For now, we will return just an empty object. Let's test if it's working or not. So the route is as usual users, but the method will be post instead of get. Now we are getting a 200 OK and an empty object. So the route is working. Let's create a functionality. To create the user, we will get the request body. So to send a request body, we will go here in body and we will pass name. Name is Arvind Kumar. We'll pass email. Email will be arvind@gmail.com. And along with this, we'll pass password. The post API is working. It's saying 200 OK and returning an empty dictionary. So let's create our functionality to add an user in our users array. For that, first we need to verify the data which are coming from the request. So for that, we'll create as a payload and the type of this data will be user payload. Now we have to create this user payload. For that, we will create a file in app called as schemas.py. For that, we need to import base model from Pydantic library, which have been already installed along with FastApi. So from Pydantic base model. Now we will create a class called as user payload, and this will extend our base model class. What are the data we need from request? So we need name, which will be a type of string. We need password, which will be a type of string. We need email, which will be a type of email string. So type of email will be email string. We will import this email string type from Pydantic library. We have created user payload. We will import it here from dot schemas import user payload. Okay. Now when we have created this user payload, we can return simply payload. Let's test this out. We are sending this payload and getting the exact payload which we have sent because we are returning the same data which we are sending. So if users don't send this name data, so let's see what happens now. Then it will give an error that name is missing and this field is required. It's coming because we have created this. It's coming because we have created this user payload and this user payload has this required keys which you have to provide in the body. Provide name again. And what if users try to provide a wrong email? Then what happens? It will say that a value is not a valid email address. That means your email has been already validated. And when we'll provide the right information which this API needs, it will be successful. So let's store this data in our users array. So before adding user in this users array, we need to give an ID for every users. For that, we can do like user payload dot model term, and then we can add user, and then we can add ID to this user. And what we will do is we will just import random. We'll import random library, and we will create a random integer whose value will be between 1 to like any number. For now, we are giving this, but when we'll store this data in our database, this ID will be automatically generated by the database. Now let's add this user in our user array and return the created user. Let's test it out. Now our user has been successfully created with this ID. Let's get all the users. As you can see that the total number of user is 1 and we are getting this user. Let's create another user. Now other user has also been created successfully as an Anand Kumar, and you can see now we have two users. One is Arvind, another is Anand. So everything is fine, but as you can see that we are also getting password in response, which we should not. Like we should not return password. So to restrict that, we have to create a schema for that. Let's create a schema. Let's create a class of user which will extend our base model. Sorry, base model. And here we will return ID, which will be a type of integer, and name, which will be string, and email, which will be email string. Now we will use this user schema here as a response model. We'll import user. Now let's check it out. Now here as you can see that we are getting ID, name, email, but we are not getting password in response. Let's create another user. Now another user has also been created, but we are not getting password in return. Let's get all the users. Here we are getting password in return. So let's fix this. Go to schemas, create another schema called as user list. In this we will return total, which will be an type of integer. With total we will give it that data key, and this data will be list of users, and this list will come from typing import list. After creating user list, let's use it here as a response model, which we have to import. Let's test this out. Here you can see that we are getting ID, email, and name, but no password. Now we have created get and post methods. Let's create another route which will give information about a single user. To get data of a single user, we have to provide ID in the URL, which will be a variable. Like we can pass any number, any ID in the URL, user/1, user/2, anything. So get that variable data, we have to provide ID in the URL like that. Let's create a function. This function is looping from all the users which we have here. And if any user is found by that ID, we will return that user. Otherwise, we will return a message that will say that this user is not found. Let's create a user. Now this user has this ID, which will I will copy. Now we are getting this user with this ID. Let's pass some other ID whose user doesn't exist. Now we are getting this message saying user not found. So everything is working fine. But now everything is working fine, but we are getting this password again. So we have to set a response model type. Let's test this again. We'll create a user with this ID. Now we are not getting this password. Next we will create a patch route. Let's create this user page payload in schema. While editing an user, we want to give the functionality so that name or email, any of both can be changed. So to do that, we'll ask name as an optional. You can provide name or you can not provide name. So we'll give it as an optional value, and this will be a type of string. The default value will be none. We have to import this optional. Now we will ask for email. This email will also be an optional. It will be a type of email string. So value will be none. Okay. Now we'll import this user payload, user page payload. Now we also need an ID with this payload. We will loop through the users and check if the user is exist with this ID or not. If user is found and you are trying to change the name of the user, then we will also check that there is a name key available in the payload or not. And if the name is key is available in the payload, we will change the name of the user. And if email is present in the payload, we will change email of the user. When the user has successfully edited, we will return that user. And if the user is not found, we'll simply return a message. Found. Let's check. Let's test. First of all, we'll create an user. Now this now a user has been created with this ID. We'll get this user. We are getting this user. Let's give it a name of John Doe. Here I'm only changing the name of the user. So as you can see this, the name of the user has been changed. Now, if I try to change the email of the user, now email has been also changed. And if I try to change both the same, both email and name has been changed successfully. But here we are again getting password. So let's remove this from the response. Now you know how to remove. Yes, we have to set this response model as user. Okay, let's test. We'll create an user. Okay, password is missing. Now user has been created. Let's edit this user and I will change the name and email. Now both thing has been changed. As you can see that there is only one user. Name is John Doe and email is johndoe@gmail.com. Now next we will create a delete route. This delete will also ask for an ID, which user you have to delete. Let's clear our users variable and users dot and extend this users variable which this will. Let's test this out. So now this user is created. Let's, as you can see, now I have one user with this ID. Let's delete this user. We can also get one detail of this user. Now I will delete this user. User is deleted. And I'll try to get the user. Now I have zero user. Now we have successfully learned how to create an CRUD API in Python using FastAPI. This data has been stored locally in this users variable. Next video, we will store these users in a database. Thanks for watching.